I don't remember being raised by you. And what's with this method? Frankly, this is kidnapping, isn't it? Don't say such awful things. With that, Violet slapped my cheek hard. Inside, I thought to myself, good, keep it going. Eventually, the taxi arrived at a somewhat faded 3-story high building. Surprised? I'm a wealthy executive's wife, made it big and succeeded in life. You're still poor, at the bottom, so I thought I'd share some with you. I see. She's trying to use me after all. Once my parents found and came to rescue me, I firmly stated, no, this person alone is my mom. She has been by my side for 3 times longer than you have, providing me with warm days. So what? You're saying you chose to live in poverty with this person who's ill. At that, Violet spoke, and my dad, David, let out a big laugh, finding it amusing. Hey, Violet. Let me introduce you to a family and a company worth $500 million. What? My name is Sharon. I'm 18 and will be a college student this spring. Having safely finished my entrance exams, I'm now enjoying the days free from studying for exams. Hey, isn't it about time to be heading out? David, in an apron, calls up the stairs to my room on the 2nd floor. I know! I shout back. That's because today is the day for college registration. Since I've decided to go to a college in the next state, I need to attend a session about dorms or apartments provided by the school. Maybe I should go with you? I'm fine by myself. If you say so. David nods, looking a bit sad. Lily wanted to go, too. She's got work, can't be helped. Yes, our family consists of 3 people. The difference from other families is that Mom earns well outside, while Dad is the homemaker. David is now 48. Mom, Lily, is 40, 8 years his junior. And she and I are not related by blood. But to me, she's the only mom. I could never acknowledge as mom the woman who left me at 3 years old and a sick David to become some executive's mistress. Not in a million years. The real mom left us 15 years ago. Her name is Violet. It infuriates me even to call her mom, so I always refer to her by name in my mind. But of course, I'd never say such things in front of my dad. He's kind, and I know it would make him sad to hear me speak ill of my biological parent. I don't want to see him sad. I want to keep seeing him smile gently between Lily and I. There were 2 reasons Violet left us 15 years ago. One was my dad's illness. The other was an affair with the president of the company she was part-timing at. Back then, Dad couldn't bring himself to blame Violet for the affair. He simply didn't have the strength. Dad's illness is incurable by nature. And back then, his condition was particularly severe. Hearing this, Violet yelled at him. Incurable? So it's a terminal illness? Dad was disillusioned by Violet's insensitivity, even in a hospital room filled with beds. That's why he signed the divorce papers she presented without hesitation. I couldn't let such a woman remain my mom. I was staying at Dad's parents' house at the time, and my grandparents would hug me, tears in their eyes, pitying me. It wasn't until I was in high school that I realized half of those tears were of frustration. Now, they live freely in a nursing home far away, but at that time, the air was always tense with the aftermath of Violet's actions and Dad's illness. My circumstances changed when my current mom and my dad met. Dad's illness wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it required a long hospital stay at that time. It was a daily necessity to keep administering medicine through and for. Now, he leads a normal life, but back then, he was always accompanied by an enforced stand. That's when he met Lily, who was also hospitalized. At the time, Dad was 33 and Lily was 25. Dad was managing to do some work for his company remotely. The company wanted to keep Dad, a competent employee, on the roster. But the outlook was bleak. That's when the two met. Lily was hospitalized due to physical and mental exhaustion from overwork. Hospital life was a drastic change from her busy days, making her days gloomy. The two got to know each other and eventually concluded that together, they could make it work. They don't tell me the details of their relationship, perhaps because it's not suitable for a daughter to hear. However, even these two couldn't marry right away. Especially Lily. The people around them seemed to welcome the idea of an early marriage. But marrying someone 8 years older, with a divorce and a child in the past, was hard for others to understand. Lily has always been kind yet strict with me. She'd pamper me but also discipline me where necessary. After being discharged, Lily made time from her busy schedule to visit Dad. And gradually deepened her interaction with me, managing to marry with everyone's consent after 5 years. And for the past 10 years, we've lived quietly and happily. Yet, there it was.
Sharon? You're Sharon, right?
A stranger's voice stopped me as I was about to move on to the next orientation after getting my college paperwork. It was Violet.
Hey, Sharon. Do you remember me? I'm your mom.
Violet approached with a soothing tone as she said those words. I was surprised and started to flee, claiming not to know such a person. It was natural for me to act that way. How am I supposed to respond to a woman who claims to be my mom, but whom I've never seen once since parting at the age of 3? Who are you? I asked.
Don't speak as if we're strangers. Aren't I your mom?
Now that she mentions it, she's the person from the photos in the album. My grandmother used to complain, why on earth do we still have that woman's photos? It can't be helped. Photos of me up to the age of 3 inevitably include her. Dad probably kept them, bearing her presence, because he didn't want to throw away my photos. By the way, I heard about this from Lily. Unfortunately, I don't know you.
What? Are you angry? For not visiting?
Violet approached slowly, with a wry smile.
I get scolded by my family if I follow strangers. Don't say such sad things.
Saying so, Violet tried to take my hand, but I quickly shook her off and returned home. Opening the apartment door, I heard humming. Dad was in the kitchen, preparing a meal. Every day, Dad thinks of meals that Lily and I like and cooks for us. I wanted to finish this conversation before Lily returned.
Dad! Dad!
I ran into the kitchen, flustered.
Oh, Sharon. What's wrong? You look pale. And you're back earlier than I thought. Yeah. Sorry, the dorm stuff can wait.
I sat down at the dining kitchen chair, took some water from Dad, and then said,
That woman was at my college. The one who left us 15 years ago. What?
Dad exclaimed, pulling up a chair next to me.
I'm surprised you were able to recognize her face, Sharon. I had seen her in photos, and above all, she desperately tried to approach me.
That's troubling. Dad crossed his arms and murmured,
What do you think we should do? She'll probably show up at college again, won't she?
Maybe. There's no need to meet her. She and we have no relation anymore. But still. Dad tilted his head and furrowed his brows.
Why now? Why is she trying to get close to you after all this time? What? What do you mean?
David didn't answer that. Sometime later, Lily returned.
Welcome back.
I'm home. Thanks for making all my favorites. I think Lily's willingness to always express her gratitude cheerfully and brightly is one of her best traits. Her job is truly demanding. She leaves early in the morning and often returns late at night. She might even be busier than the typical dad in any ordinary family. I don't know if it's because of that or if she's considering me, but Lily didn't try to have children of her own. I once asked her lightly, and she replied, "In reality, I'm just too busy to even think about it. Besides, for me, you Sharon are my only daughter." Still, I think there must have been a desire for a child with someone she loves. But including such thoughts, I respect and am grateful for Lily. And I hope she remains happy forever. She's still 40. Having one child is still possible. Wouldn't it be better for them to have a child, considering after I go to college or become independent? After all, our family has an excellent homemaker. From that evening, my mobile phone started receiving many calls from an unknown caller.
"Dad, this."
Showing him the call history, Dad hurriedly pulled out an old notebook. It must be a number not registered on my current mobile phone. As he flips through the notebook, he eventually makes a disgusted face and lets out a big sigh.
"It's her after all. How did she find out your number?" "I don't know. She hasn't changed her number, has she?" "It seems so." "Well, she was never one to bother with such things."
Then Lily, fresh out of the bath and drying her hair, asks,
"What's going on? You both look so serious."
"What to do?" Dad signals with his eyes. I nod.
"Mom, actually, today in front of the college, Violet ambushed me. She came to see me." "What? Are you okay? Did she do anything to you?"
Dropping her towel, Lily immediately shows concern for me.
"I'm fine. She didn't do anything. But because of that, I have to reschedule the dorm and apartment tour. Oh, if only I could have gone with you."
Saying that, Lily lets out a big sigh.
"Next time, you're coming with me." "That's right. We'll also sort out the dorm stuff at the same time. How about Monday since it follows the weekend?"
"That sounds good," Lily says and then falls silent, lost in thought.
"You'll catch a cold,"
Dad says as he dries her hair with the abandoned towel, even going as far as to blow drying it. Watching them, I think to myself what a great couple they are. I want to keep this family just the way it is. That's why the thought of what Violet, who appeared out of nowhere, is planning scares me. After spending the whole weekend at home, I decided to go back to the college with Dad for the paperwork on Monday. We were walking slowly to the station. The college is a few minutes away from the nearest station. We walked leisurely side by side, talking about what the dorm might be like or how much an apartment would cost. Suddenly, I felt myself losing balance.
"Sharon?"
Dad shouts. I was grabbed by the arm and dragged into a taxi.
"Driver, go now."
A familiar voice reached my ears. It was Violet. I saw Dad's panicked figure through the window, but the taxi started moving before the door could be opened.
"What are you doing?"
Once I regained my posture, I yelled as loudly as I could.
"Because you kept ignoring my calls." "Are you saying I should answer calls from a number I don't recognize?" "That's right. So I came to you directly."
Violet approached me, and I recoiled slightly.
"Can't you just come with me without saying anything?"
"No."
"You talk as if we're strangers." "I'm your mom, aren't I?"
I scoffed at her words.
"What? That attitude. Do you really think you're my mom?"
I chose my words carefully, making sure even the driver in the front seat could hear.
"Since I gave birth to you, you are my daughter. I don't remember being raised by you."
And what's with this method? Frankly, this is kidnapping, isn't it? Don't say such awful things.
After saying that, Violet slapped my cheek hard. Inside, I thought to myself, good, keep it going. Eventually, the taxi arrived at a somewhat faded 3-story high building.
This is our company,
Violet said.
Surprised? I'm a wealthy executive's wife, made it big and succeeded in life. You're still poor at the bottom, so I thought I'd share some with you.
I see. So, she's trying to use me, I thought. After bringing me into the building, Violet pushed me into a nearby room and locked the door. I banged on the door, asking, "What are you doing?" to Violet outside.
Just wait here for a bit, please.
What does she mean? I took out my mobile phone from my pocket and immediately sent a message to David, telling him where I am. I sent a screenshot of my current location on the map and a photo of what could be seen from the room's window. Soon, I received a reply.
Stay put. I'll figure something out.
Of course, that was my intention. Eventually, Violet unlocked the door and took me out. Holding onto my arm, she led me up the stairs to a room about halfway down the second floor. Voices of several people could be heard from inside. Violet forcefully opened the door. As expected, several people were inside, seemingly in the middle of a meeting by the placement of the desk and whiteboard.
What is this? We're in the middle of a meeting here.
The youngest-looking person with glasses stood up and approached us. However, Violet pulled me inside.
It's nothing, Neil. I was his wife after all, so I have the right to participate in meetings deciding the company's future. We didn't invite you. Oh, speaking to your stepmother like that?
I see. So, this Neil with glasses is the president's son. But the whiteboard mentioned something about future management strategies. And the absence of the president himself means
you're just Dad's second wife. And you were involved with Dad even when Mom was here. And you call yourself a stepmother? That's right. Everything about after the president's death was supposed to have been discussed after the funeral. What are you doing coming here now? Oh, acting all high and mighty just because you used to be my superior.
Then, for some reason, Violet pushed me forward. Hey, Neil.
This girl, who is like a stepsister to you, is struggling with college fees. Couldn't you provide some support?
What? I was shocked. Was I brought here for that reason?
College fees?
Neil's tone slightly changed.
Yes. This child is my biological daughter. She's 18, just started college. Living a poor life with David who's ill. Hey, if you felt like supporting her a bit, couldn't you give me a bit more of his fortune?
I looked at Neil's face. The atmosphere was one of trouble. I see. It seems I must speak up.
What are you talking about? I haven't been informed about any of this. Hey, don't talk crazy. Because it's true, isn't it? You kidnapped me and dragged me here all of a sudden. All of a sudden?
Neil picked up on my words.
Yes, all of a sudden. I was supposed to be going with Dad to take care of dormitory paperwork, not college paperwork. So, you mean to say the college paperwork is already done? Including the tuition? Yes, it's all been paid for.
Neil glared at Violet. Violet looked puzzled, as if wondering what was going on. Neil continued to question me.
So, how did you end up here? I came by taxi. I have no business here myself. I was forcibly brought here by this person. Be quiet!
Violet then slapped my other cheek. What a strength. It stung.
Doesn't this person know the meaning of restraint? Anyway, I tried to buy time. I had contacted Dad, and probably Lily would take some action. Until then, I needed to extract as much information as possible from these people.
I see. So you really don't know anything, huh?
Neil started.
I'm the son of the previous president. Officially, I'm supposed to be the president from this term. And you're saying you're my stepsister?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I stated clearly. I was abandoned by this person at the age of 3, along with my sick dad. Then, I felt the atmosphere in the room turn cold. Of course, their gazes were all directed at Violet. How shallow is Violet? Did she think I remained the 3-year-old she left behind? Did she assume I, now a college student, would be afraid of Violet and comply with her demands? Perhaps in her mind, the past 15 years never happened.
I remember very well. You called us once, didn't you? Do you remember what you said then?
What did I say?
The same thing you said to me earlier. You bragged about being a wealthy executive's wife, successful in life, while laughing and calling us poor, living at the bottom.
I could feel the people in the room pulling away.
You said that? When was this? It must have been when you got remarried, right? I had no idea about any of it. Maybe about 10 years ago? Being a college student now means you were still in elementary school back then. Were you really spoken to so horribly at such a young age?
Yes. I nodded.
Well, by that time, her words didn't harm me anymore.
That's when it happened. People started running into the company building.
Sharon, are you okay? Sharon, are you all right? Where are you?
I could hear the voices of David and Lily shouting loudly. More footsteps followed. I peeked into the hallway and shouted, "This way, Dad and Mom." Relying on my voice, they ran through the stairs and hallways, and with a noise, they opened the door. "You're safe." Sharon, thank goodness. Saying that, Lily hugged me tightly.
I was so worried. I'm okay. Got slapped twice on the cheek, though.
Twice, huh? Someone behind my parents stared at my face and pointed a camera at me.
Let me take a photo. Go ahead.
I pushed my face forward, boldly. The cheek Violet slapped really hurt. Might as well get it documented as evidence.
Who are you people?
Violet shouted, pointing at my parents.
Have you forgotten the face of your husband from 15 years ago? What? What's with that healthy look? Is it bad to look healthy?
Ah, I see. Was that the reason she couldn't immediately understand that I was with Dad? It seems this person truly believed that Dad had remained bedridden due to his illness all this time.
You said you had an incurable disease. I'm not cured. It's just that life is possible even without a cure. Do you know what remission is? Remission?
She seemed not to know.
Remission means the symptoms have temporarily lightened or disappeared. There's a possibility of recovery, but also a high chance of relapse.
Yes, he's not cured. We always have to be careful about his condition, take various medicines without forgetting, and continue visiting the hospital regularly.
So, saying he has an incurable disease isn't a lie, is it?
Lily bit at that.
Who the hell are you? I was about to ask you the same. What are you doing to my daughter? Her cheeks. She's my daughter. I can do whatever I want.
I couldn't stay silent at that.
No, this person alone is my mom. She has been by my side for 3 times longer than you ever did, giving me a warm home.
So what? You're saying you chose to live in poverty with this person who's ill?
Violet said, and David laughed loudly, finding it amusing.
Hey, Violet. Let me introduce you to a family and a company worth $500 million. What?
Yes.
So, let me reintroduce myself, Violet. I'm Lily, this man's wife. I heard about how you abandoned a man with an illness and a 3-year-old Sharon to become another man's mistress, but I see you're really as unreasonable as they say.
That's an interesting story indeed. I'd love to hear more about it.
Neil showed interest in the conversation.
By the way, mentioning a $500 million annual revenue, are you perhaps the president of T Corporation?
Yes. I believe we've had dealings with your company.
Lily spread her radiant smile to everyone but Violet.
Indeed, the person who supports our busy lives daily had been entrusted with the significant role of a company president since her 20s. Lily met Dad when the pressure of her suddenly acquired responsibilities became too much, causing both her body and mind to scream for help, leading to her hospitalization. Lily was born as the only daughter in the founding family. However, she lost her parents to an accident at an early age. Then, still at the young age of 25, she took over the presidency, struggling with the immense expectations around her and her inability to meet them. During her hospitalization for severe stress-induced gastritis, she met Dad, who was aiming for remission, and me when I visited him. Dad told Lily back then,
"It's important to delegate what feels insurmountable to someone you can trust."
That seemed to have lightened Lily's burden significantly. Tired of the matchmaking attempts by meddling relatives, she found comfort and ease in being with Dad, deciding to marry him because she could rely on him and be herself around him.
You seemed quite pleased with yourself after becoming the president's wife following the previous one's death. My current wife is a president herself. That's right. T Corporation handles all the specialized cleaning required by certain departments within our company. And she's the president of that company. If you had even a slight interest in the economy, she wouldn't be a stranger to you.
Violet was surprised by Neil's words.
Yes, we perform a wide range of cleaning services, from ordinary cleaning to those requiring special expertise. I believe we have been dealing with your company since your father's time. It seems we need to reconsider that contract now.
Lily looked around sternly.
Right? A company that harbors someone who would kidnap our daughter should have its contract terminated. We cannot trust such a company. That is...
The executives present shifted uncomfortably.
Please reconsider. Our business cannot function without your company's cooperation. What? Really?
Violet looked confused.
Violet, didn't you know that? And yet you tried to obstruct me from becoming president and even tried to withdraw money. You're incredibly ignorant. In fact, your presence has been nothing but harmful to this company, hasn't it, everyone?
Exactly, that's right. The company's executives agreed.
What? But Supposedly, the inheritance you received from Dad's will was given to you long ago. What did you do with that money? The fact that you're demanding more now suggests you've squandered it all, or were you already in debt?
Neil pressed further.
Maybe she spent it on something?
Lily interjected.
Right, I had our daughter's situation investigated hastily in 2 days because a suspicious person approached her.
2 days? Ah, yes, the weekend.
And the photos taken earlier.
The company's lawyer nodded.
Upon the president's request, we conducted a little investigation on her, and it appears she's been a regular at nightclubs for quite some time, making substantial donations there.
Perhaps you've been receiving payment demands because you've fallen behind?
So that's what you were doing? Wow.
I gave Violet an exasperated look as if to say, "Can you believe this?"
Thank you for the investigation.
No problem. It's problematic for us to have such a person associated with a business partner.
Indeed, we should deal with harmful elements to the company as soon as possible.
As Neil said this, our lawyer nodded emphatically. Then, several men entered from behind.
You are under arrest for kidnapping and unlawful confinement.
The men, displaying police badges, entered and handcuffed Violet.
What do you mean? I just took my daughter.
After divorcing me and dumping the custody on me, you're practically a stranger now. And I don't recall ever receiving child support from you, I added, dismayed at her claiming any parental rights. Abducting me in front of Dad in a taxi, how can you not realize how wrong your actions are?
How dare you, my own daughter?
It's fine to be brazen. I've wanted to say this. I stared firmly at Violet.
I never wanted to think about you. Just disappear from my sight. Don't ever show your face again.
Even Violet was taken aback by those words. Then, let's go, said the police as they pushed her body and took her outside. Violet was officially arrested for being the perpetrator of the kidnapping and is currently under investigation. It was a sloppy crime, to say the least. It's strange she didn't notice Dad walking nearby, but more so that she suddenly dragged me into a taxi. Inside the car, I deliberately spoke loudly and clearly, expressing that being taken was against my will and that I currently felt nothing towards Mom. I wanted the driver to hear clearly that I was obviously unwilling. Sure enough, the suspicious driver seems to have broadcast our conversation over the radio. And the taxi company, finding the audio suspicious, recorded it. It was foolish of Violet not to confiscate my mobile phone. With today's phones, it's easy to pinpoint your current location and send a map image as evidence. I learned such crisis management from Lily. She too had been taught at home how to determine her whereabouts in case of an emergency. It appears the money Violet squandered was indeed substantial, and she is being asked to return it to the company. A criminal trial for the kidnapping will take place, and it's certain she will end up behind bars. We have no intention of showing mercy, no matter what their lawyers say. Violet should thoroughly realize her shallowness.
Smile, smile.
On the day of my university's entrance ceremony, Dad and I were taking photos together. Next, it's my turn. Saying that, Lily handed the camera to Dad and swapped places.
The two of you together look truly wonderful.
Dad said something that seemed a bit cheesy. Maybe it was the spring weather. But we won't see each other for a while now, Lily said, tearing up a bit. Dad wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Facing them, I spoke up.
Hey, I have a request.
Oh, what is it?
I want to have a brother or sister this time.
Their faces turned red.
Now? Yeah. Because, Mom, you're 40, right? That's still a viable age. Now that I'm an adult, maybe you two could spend some time together and show me a brother or sister?
Don't say that. Lily hugged me. You are my one and only daughter.
That's true, but Mom, you have so much love to give, you must be lonely without me. Oh, come on! I should have made you go to a closer school. That's impossible.
I chuckled. Actually, wanting to see a sibling or worrying about loneliness was just a pretext. Lily is currently at the top of her company. But I don't think I should be the one to take over. Dad agrees with this. After all, I am David's child, not Lily's biological child. No matter how much Lily treats me as her own, others may not recognize it. especially since this company is a well-established mid-tier business with a long history. There's a tradition of family management in a good sense. She must be aware of this. After a moment of silence, Lily finally nodded deeply. Right. Maybe I should give it a little try. She smiled hesitantly and a bit shyly, uncharacteristic of her. No matter how things turn out, we remain a family. We've managed well so far. And surely, we'll continue to get along well in the future.
Look, that's my friend's dad.
This happened when I attended my beloved niece Gloria's parents' day. I was shocked to see a couple walking into the classroom. Because the man, cozying up to a woman I didn't recognize, was my own husband, Mike. After talking to Gloria, everything clicked for me. So, that's what it was all about. I'll never forgive this. As Mike was about to leave the classroom, I blocked his way, putting on a smile. Let's continue to get along as families, shall we? Please, stay with us until the end to see the turmoil that unfolds from here. My name is Emily, I'm 33 years old, and we're a dual-income couple in our 5th year of marriage. My husband's name is Mike. We met in a sort of half-set-up situation. My parents, who I met later in life, became good friends with Mike's parents, and we first met at a family dinner we were all invited to. Mike made the first move, and that's how our dating began. After a year and a half of dating, when we decided to marry, both sets of parents were thrilled. Everyone around us congratulated us, saying we were a perfect match. At that time, my close sister Flora also attended from afar, bringing along her then 1-year-old daughter Gloria, and I remember feeling so happy. 5 years later, I was still living with Mike, busy with work. Mike would say he's busy with work, coming home late on weekdays, and increasingly, his precious weekends were spent working. With Mike off and away, I found myself spending more time alone. I wish we had kids. That thought crossed my mind, and I shook it off. Actually, not long after we got married, Mike dropped a bombshell on me. I, actually, can't have children. The hospital test results he showed me clearly stated that. Since when did you know? I knew before we got married. But I thought if I told you, you might not marry me. Please, Emily, I don't want our parents to know about this. Keep it a secret. Mike had always said he loved kids and wanted a daughter someday. Knowing that, I felt deeply sorry for him at that moment. We'll take care of each other instead of having kids. Let's live our lives together. With those words from Mike, I nodded and resigned myself to giving up on the idea of having children. Now, 5 years later, did Mike keep his word? No, he didn't. Saying he's busy and tired, leaving all the household chores to me despite being a dual-income couple, without ever showing appreciation, his attitude towards me turned increasingly cold. One day, I got a call from Flora. She had moved abroad with her husband right after our wedding, but now that his assignment was over, they were moving back, not too far from us. Gloria was now 6 years old. I had seen her in photos, but this would be our first real interaction since the wedding. I was looking forward to meeting Flora and Gloria again. That night, I tried to tell Mike, who came home late, about Flora's return. Welcome back, Mike. You know, I got a call from Flora today. I'm tired. I don't have time for small talk. Mike looked down at me coldly and quickly went to the bathroom. Left alone, I stood there, feeling lonely. Despite his aloof attitude towards me, Mike left all the troublesome matters for me to handle. Hey! We're going to have a birthday party for Mom. Dad asked me to prepare, so you take care of it. I was left puzzled when he unilaterally said that, but I went ahead and prepared for my mother-in-law, Helen's birthday party, squeezing it into my busy schedule. On the day of the birthday party, Mike, who attended, wore a proud smile as he saw Helen's joy.
This birthday party, I set it all up. All for my dear Mom. Dad, I did good, right?
Despite the fact that he had dumped everything on me, Mike had the audacity to claim the credit, which irked me a bit. However, after the birthday party was over, my father-in-law Nicholas and Helen thanked me. We know it was Emily who prepared everything. Thanks for doing this for Helen. Please continue to take good care of Mike. They were as kind to me as they had been since the day we got married. Despite my growing grievances with Mike, I was grateful for having met Nicholas and Helen. Sometime later, Mike's arrogant behavior only escalated. He wouldn't have a proper conversation with me, yet he always found something to complain about regarding the housework. One morning, an incident occurred.
Hey, Emily! What were you thinking?
Mike yelled at me, his face contorted with anger as I was getting ready to leave for work. What's wrong with you all of a sudden?
You didn't polish my shoes. How am I supposed to go to work like this?
Indeed, Mike had come home after I had gone to bed the previous night, so I hadn't polished his shoes. But, fed up with the mounting stress, I retorted.
They're your shoes. Why don't you take care of them yourself? Stop expecting me to do everything.
In the next moment, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. It took a second to realize Mike had slapped me.
Mike, did you just hit me? Shut up. There's nothing wrong with disciplining my wife. If you don't want this to happen, do your job as a wife properly.
With that, Mike stormed out of the house. I was left clutching my cheek, collapsing onto the floor.
He's hardly home, acts cold, and now violence. This is too much.
That's when I began to question the meaning of my marriage to Mike. Yet, considering how happy our parents were when we married, and how kind Nicholas and Helen have been to me, I couldn't easily decide to divorce. One day, not long after she had returned from abroad, Flora asked, "Would you come to my daughter's Parents' Day?" Only 2 family members could attend, and Flora's husband couldn't make it because of work. I happily agreed, saying,
"I'll be there."
On the day of the Parents' Day, I went with Flora to Gloria's classroom. We waved back at Gloria, who was happily waving at us. Soon, the lesson started, and I watched from the back corner of the classroom. Then, a couple entered the classroom late. I was shocked when I glanced at them, because the dad was unmistakably Mike. He was there with a blonde woman, dressed flamboyantly, whispering and looking cozy as they started watching the class. I told Flora, and both of us, surprised, tried to stay out of sight from Mike for the time being. At that moment, I discreetly sent a message to someone. As the Parents' Day came to a close, the children started making their way over to their parents. Gloria ran over to Flora, and I bent down to ask her, "Do you know that man over there?"
That's Irene's dad. I saw his picture at their house when we went over to play.
Gloria had been abroad for so long that she didn't remember Mike's face since the wedding when she was 1. At that moment, I understood everything.
So that's what it was. I will never forgive this.
As Mike, the woman, and a child named Irene were about to leave the classroom, I blocked their path, forcing a smile in front of the child.
Hello. I hear Gloria has been getting along well with you. Thank you for that.
Mike looked at me, his face freezing over. The woman casually replied, "Hello."
Since the kids get along so well, let's all continue to be friendly, shall we? Family style.
Huh. Beside the puzzled woman, Mike started to tremble. Then Flora said, "Since the 2 want to play together, we'll take Irene with us," and quickly whispered something to me as she was leaving. As Flora and the children walked away, it left me, Mike, and the woman. "Come on, Mike, let's go," Johanna said. Yes, excuse us," Mike responded, trying to act like a stranger. I grabbed Mike's arm with a smile, still.
Huh? What are you doing with my husband? And who are you?
I then introduced myself with a serious face. Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Emily. His wife, you know? The woman's face turned pale as she realized the situation. They tried to dash away. But having been in track and field during my school days, I easily caught up and stopped them.
At the school gate, Mike gasped.
What? Dad, Mom too.
Yes, the person I emailed during Parents' Day was Nicholas. I had sent him a message asking him to come quickly to Gloria's school. Seeing Nicholas and Helen, Mike gave up trying to escape and collapsed. Nicholas, Helen, and I put Mike and the woman in the car and headed to the in-laws' house. In the living room of the in-laws' house, with the two seated side by side, I confronted them. So, why were you at Parents' Day?
It was nothing. She's just an acquaintance. A single mother who asked me to act as a father figure, nothing more.
But Gloria mentioned there are family photos of you at her house. Do you usually take family photos with just acquaintances? You don't need to lie so blatantly. Mike, resigning himself, began to explain. The woman's name was Johanna. He had been involved with her before we met. Johanna worked at a night bar, and thinking Nicholas and Helen wouldn't approve, he kept it hidden. After introducing me to his parents, he broke off the relationship with Johanna. But right after we got engaged, Johanna contacted him saying, "I gave birth to your child." After seeing Irene, I couldn't help but go back to Johanna. I found her so adorable. That's when I asked something that had been bothering me. You can't have children, right? That medical report was real, wasn't it?
That's because...
Mike began to reveal something shocking. Right before our marriage, Johanna had told him, "Don't have children with anyone but this child." And so, Mike had gone through with a vasectomy.
For such a selfish reason, you made me give up on having children. Do you understand how I felt?
Johanna laughed at my angry reproach. Shut up, loser. Mike loves me.
You are just a pity marriage.
When I asked, "Is that true, Mike?" he nodded. I married Mike because Nicholas and Helen liked me, and our parents got along well. I was efficient, took care of the house and personal matters perfectly. So he only ever saw me as a maid. So, a maid, huh? But now that it's out, there's no helping it. I'll divorce you. I have a woman I love and a lovely daughter. You're no longer needed. That's when Nicholas, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Did you forget why Emily's parents and we got along so well?
Huh?
The truth was, both our parents owned businesses and were in a cooperative relationship. Currently, Nicholas's company's most important client was the company where I now serve as a department head, owned by my parents. You might not know since you were sent to work at a friend's company for training, but if we lose the business with Emily's company, we won't survive. It was then revealed that Nicholas had always told Mike, "You'll take over someday, so keep up with the company's affairs." But Mike, not taking it seriously, was unaware that my parents' company was the most crucial client.
So, I intended to leave the company to you, but now there may not be a company to inherit. More importantly, we're disowning you. I never want to see the face of such a foolish son again.
As Nicholas declared disownment, Mike started to panic, begging Nicholas and Helen. But Nicholas and Helen firmly refused him. At that moment, I received an email on my mobile phone. Checking it, I smirked. So, Johanna. How's Irene's real dad doing?
Huh?
I confronted them with a photo of Johanna, heavily pregnant and looking cozy in a childbirth class with a brown-haired man unknown to me. You seemed quite close to this man during your pregnancy. Where did he go?
How do you have that?
I explained that when Flora took the children away, I had asked her to gather any information she could on this woman. Flora, using her network of mom friends, managed to get this photo. According to her mom friend, this man used to accompany her to every prenatal checkup. I thought he was the new husband Mike knew about. Hearing this, Johanna's face grew paler and paler. Mike was visibly shaken by the photo. No wonder. Since the man in the picture and Irene looked remarkably alike.
Hey, Johanna! What's going on? This man looks exactly like Irene.
When I pressed her to tell the truth,
Johanna seemed to resign herself and began to speak. She admitted to two-timing while with Mike, and said that she got pregnant right after they broke up, but after the child was born, they had a big fight, and he left. She thought it would be best to claim the child was Mike's, the prospective company president's, to monopolize Nicholas's inheritance, so she convinced Mike to have a vasectomy.
You're kidding! I believed in you and became incapable of having kids.
Mike shook Johanna's shoulders in disbelief, but she just turned pale and said nothing. Then Mike approached me.
I'm sorry, Emily. I was deceived by this woman. You said you'd stay with me even if we couldn't have kids. Let's start over. I only love you.
Huh? Didn't you just say I was no longer needed? Who's the maid? Mike was at a loss for words, so I declared.
We're getting a divorce. And I'll be suing both of you for adultery, so be prepared.
As Mike broke down crying, I told him.
Never show your face to me again.
I left Mike and Johanna to their ugly argument and walked away. Eventually, my divorce from Mike was finalized. I received $40,000 in alimony from Mike and $20,000 from Johanna. Nicholas and Helen, having disowned Mike and deeply apologized, persuaded my parents to continue the business dealings. They informed the president of the company Mike was supposed to inherit that they were leaving Mike's fate in their hands. Consequently, Mike, who had never been serious at work, was fired. Johanna moved away with her child and returned to night work, likely struggling with debts incurred from paying me alimony. After separating from Johanna and depleting his savings, jobless Mike lived alone in a showerless apartment, desperately job hunting. As for me, 3 years after leaving Mike, I remarried a sincere man I met through work, who treats me kindly, and we were blessed with the child I had always wished for. We're now looking forward to meeting our baby, enjoying each day happily. Can you lend me some money to go to the hospital? In the middle of the night, 8-year-old Owen came to our house. Moreover, he was limping in pain. It's over an hour's walk for an adult to our place. What on earth happened? Looking closer, various parts of his body were scraped, and he was bleeding. Exhausted and in pain, Owen's eyes were vacant, as if he might collapse at any moment.
Absolutely not!
My husband shouted at the innocent child. He was very angry and went somewhere. And then, I was shaken to my core by my husband's unexpected action. I am Kate, 60 years old. I lived with my husband, Raymond. Our son and his wife lived in the next town, about an hour's walk from our house, making a car essential for travel. Phil's wife, Linda, is 6 years younger than him, and they have an 8-year-old grandson, Owen. Until now, Phil often brought Owen to our house, so I had been taking care of Owen since he was a baby. On the other hand, Linda rarely came over and had told Phil, "Bring him here." However, it seems Linda has been devoted to housework and childcare, wanting to make some free time for her from now on. Moreover, Phil said, Linda is very domestic and takes good care of us, satisfied with their current family situation. There's no way to intervene, even as a mom. I told myself, letting them do as they wished. But I had no idea such a tragedy would strike us later. It was when Phil was promoted and decided to work abroad half a year ago. Phil, who hates being away from his family, wanted to leave Japan with his family. However, Linda objected. I told myself, letting them do as they wished. But I had no idea such a tragedy would strike us later. It was when Phil was promoted and decided to work abroad half a year ago. Phil, who hates being away from his family, wanted to leave Japan with his family. However, Linda objected.
Owen has just started elementary school and has friends. It's cruel to make him transfer.
Of course, Phil tried to persuade her. But Linda insisted, and with a heavy heart, he left for abroad alone. And sadly, at the same time, Owen stopped coming to our house. I have repeatedly asked Linda to let Owen visit, but each time she made up excuses to refuse. Still not giving up, I pleaded over the phone just to see him for a moment.
Then Linda, raising her voice, ranted at me.
It's hard enough without Phil. I can't stand having to worry about you too. Are you trying to monitor me?
No, that's not it at all. Just a short time at the doorstep, I just want to see Owen's face.
Don't you understand I don't want that? If you keep pestering me, I'll tell Phil and have him scold you.
After saying that, Linda abruptly hung up. Sigh, it seems like nothing will help. Maybe that's just how a son's wife is. Phil had emailed me that his new job was demanding, cutting into his sleep time. Not wanting to cause Phil any more worry, I decided to wait to see Owen until Phil returned home. And before I knew it, more than half a year had passed since I last saw Owen. Raymond and I, missing seeing Owen's face, looked at his photos every day to distract ourselves. Raymond's favorite was a group photo from Owen's entrance ceremony. According to Raymond, Owen's anxious face was adorable. One evening, just as the clock struck 9 p.m., the sound of the house doorbell rang suddenly, so I opened the front door. Can you lend me some money to go to the hospital? What a surprise, 8-year-old Owen had come.
What happened to you?
My leg hurts, and I can't sleep at night, so I decided to go to the hospital myself. But this is all I have. When Owen slowly opened his palm, there were 3 dimes. Apparently, he had walked here, dragging his leg in pain, for over an hour. I fell on the way, said Owen, whose knees were scraped and bleeding. But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand. I decided to slowly listen to his story and invited Owen into the house for now. Then, at that moment, Raymond, who had been silent until then, suddenly spoke up.
Absolutely not. What are you saying? Are you out of your mind? Owen is in so much trouble.
Angry at Raymond's cold attitude, I grabbed his sweater with both hands and shook him. However, Raymond pulled my hands away with great force and, with a face like a demon, left the house without saying anything. It's because I came. I'm sorry. I'll go home now. Owen, completely shrunken, turned his back on me and reached for the doorknob. Owen, don't worry about Grandpa. I'll take you to the hospital myself, so no need to worry. I immediately called an ambulance and at the same time, I called Linda. But I couldn't get through to her, and my texts weren't even read. 20 minutes later, while all this was happening, the paramedics finally arrived. Owen was taken to a nearby hospital, and I accompanied him. Afterwards, Owen was diagnosed with a fracture by the doctor. He was treated and instructed to rest at home. What is Linda doing at a time like this? Even at this point, I couldn't get in touch with Linda, so I decided to take Owen back to our house. Would you like something warm to drink? You used to like tea with honey, didn't you? I'll prepare it now, so please sit in that chair and wait. As soon as we arrived home, I filled the kettle with water and turned on the stove. Then, Owen suddenly came close to me. Oh dear, you should be sitting still. It's not that, Grandma. You see. At this moment, I was told an astonishing truth by Owen. Owen, having confessed everything, had big tears in his eyes. So that's what happened. It must have been hard for you. But you can rest easy now. I hugged him gently, as if wrapping him in warmth. And then, I was informed of a certain event by an unexpected person.
Those who made Owen go through this will not get away with it.
A flame of revenge ignited within me. The next day at noon. Finally, Linda answered the phone. Owen has fractured his leg and was seen at the hospital. Now, he's at our place. Apparently, resting at home and eating nutritious food will help him heal faster. Then, Kate, please continue to take care of Owen for a while. You must be happy to be able to look after Owen so much since you haven't been able to see him until now, right? I just said, understood, and hung up. I had no intention of sending Owen back to that house. Even if Linda had said, I'm coming to pick up the child now, I planned to keep Owen with me by any means, so Linda's response was exactly what I wanted. However, I felt anger at her attitude as a mother.
But I didn't want to get unnecessarily confrontational and spoil the plan. In the meantime, as I supported Owen, I ran around preparing for retaliation, and finally, everything was ready. All right, watch out. Today, right here, I'll bring you down. A week after Owen came to stay with us, I left him at home to look after himself for a bit while I, accompanied by someone, made a surprise visit to Linda's place.
What is this about? Showing up out of the blue. Please, just go home.
I had gotten a key to their house from Owen. Ignoring Linda's protests, I began to look around the room.
Was someone here just before we arrived?
I noticed that, although the room was generally tidy, the sheets on the bed in the bedroom were unusually disheveled.
Enough of this. I'll call the police if I have to.
Oh, Linda, you really think you're in any position to say that?
I've heard everything from Owen. Leaving him all alone while you're out at night, I see.
He was told not to tell anyone. What Owen had tearfully told me before was about this very issue. According to him, one day, feeling lonely and scared because he was sick, he tried to stop Linda from going out at night by standing in the doorway with his arms outstretched.
But you just pushed him aside and left anyway. He hurt his ankle when he fell.
Linda always told Owen.
Don't you dare tell Dad or anyone about what happens at home, or you'll go without food.
But that day, unable to bear the pain any longer, Owen thought, maybe Grandpa and Grandma can help somehow. So, relying on his memory, he limped all the way to our house.
If you have money for luxury brands, you should at least take Owen to the hospital.
When I opened the closet, it was packed with obviously expensive bags and clothes. Owen had confided in me.
Mom always has nice clothes and bags, but she doesn't care about me.
It was clear Linda's possessions were all high-end and flashy.
The loneliness without Phil, you're trying to fill it with shopping. That's also on your son, you know.
Linda, veins throbbing with anger, pointed her finger at me. Then, suddenly, a low voice boomed from behind me.
Shut up! I've seen the affair with my own eyes.
The voice belonged unmistakably to Raymond. He had stormed Linda's home with me. That day Owen came to us seeking help.
Not lending it!
Raymond had shouted before storming off, leaving me initially infuriated. However, his anger was actually directed at Linda. Overwhelmed by fury, he had blurted out without thinking. Raymond had headed straight for Linda's house after leaving ours.
I saw you getting into a car driven by a man at that very moment. And I knew he was Owen's first-grade teacher.
Raymond had memorized the face of the teacher who had been in charge of Owen's class from looking at the school photo every day. After Owen revealed the truth to us, we were informed about Linda's secret rendezvous with Owen's former teacher.
I heard from the affair partner that you always dressed provocatively for parent-teacher meetings and aggressively flirted with him.
I confronted the former teacher based on Raymond's testimony. The affair partner admitted that despite knowing it was wrong, he gave in to Linda's temptations when Owen moved to a different class. The former teacher expressed remorse and readily agreed to pay the compensation. He had already submitted his resignation and promised never to see Linda again, planning to return to his hometown.
You stayed in Japan because you couldn't bear to part with him, under the guise of for the child's sake, didn't you? Well, that's...
Linda faltered, caught off guard. I assumed that she hadn't taken Owen to the hospital after pushing him because she feared being discovered. And perhaps she thought Phil would cut her allowance if he found out, which is why she didn't take Owen to the hospital. Then, likely because I had accurately pinpointed the truth. Linda couldn't hide her agitation. However, after a brief pause, she defiantly claimed,
If I beg Phil, he'll surely forgive me.
Haha, he really loves me.
Linda, enough is enough. Phil, when did you get back?
Phil, having been informed by me, had hurried back to verify the truth with his own eyes. Believing Linda wouldn't show her true self in his presence, he secretly observed everything from the shadows.
I've heard it all. I can't forgive you. Your behavior towards Dad and Mom is too appalling.
I want a divorce. Wait a minute. It was just a lapse in judgment. Plus, Owen is only 8. He needs his mom. I just visited Owen at the hospital, and he's made it clear he doesn't need a mom like you.
Even after receiving such a decisive blow from Phil, Linda desperately begged for reconciliation. But Phil steadfastly refused. Linda then turned to me with a fierce look, baring her teeth.
You've made him leave me because of your meddling. How do you plan to take responsibility for this? That's on you. Besides, I heard you've always seen Phil as nothing but an ATM.
I had been sniffing around Linda, checking if she had any secrets by going through the wedding guest list and making calls.
And I'll be sure to inform your parents about all of this, so be prepared. Stop! My dad hates dishonesty. If he finds out about this, I'll be disowned. Then who will take care of me?
You're an adult.
Why not work for yourself? No way! I've been living a comfortable housewife life on Phil's salary. I don't want to work now. It's too humiliating.
Faced with Linda's selfishness, both Raymond and Phil were dumbfounded, speechless.
You'd better experience some hardship and reflect on your actions.
Can't you do something? I'm sorry. I really am remorseful. You're the only one I can turn to now. Finally, Linda begged for forgiveness through her tears. However, I simply looked at her coldly, without giving any response. Perhaps thinking she had no other options left. She started to cry out.
I'm so sorry. Please help me.
Right there and then.
You know, Owen sought your help many times too. But you ignored all his pleas. Thinking only of yourself is really convenient, isn't it?
Hearing my words, Linda broke down crying, but I was unmoved and threw her out of the house. After that, Phil and Linda's divorce was finalized, and Linda was ordered to pay $30,000 in alimony. We also claimed $10,000 from her affair partner, the former teacher. But Linda, having drained her savings, got a job at a night bar only to be fired soon after due to her selfish nature. Currently, she's juggling jobs in road construction and cleaning. Phil still has to work abroad but has promised to return home whenever possible to see Owen. Until Phil returns, we, as a couple, have taken it upon ourselves to care for Owen. Filling the gap of the time we couldn't see him, watching Owen grow has brought true happiness to Raymond and me. I'm in Charleston right now. What do you want for a souvenir?
What? Charleston? Are you that far away and coming back today?
I'm staying in Charleston today, heading to Savannah in Georgia tomorrow, and planning to return the night after tomorrow.
Is Jackson with you? What about work?
Jackson and Lily are off today and tomorrow, and they took the day after off work too.
Lily's there too?
Yeah, it's a family trip. So, I'm counting on you to house sit, lol. Mason left for a trip with Jackson and Lily, leaving me behind. This was problematic enough, but Mason had another issue up his sleeve. Also, you're handling the trip expenses, lol.
What do you mean?
I borrowed a credit card from your wallet.
You did what?
I've been patient with Mason, but this was unforgivable. However, when I checked my wallet, my anger quickly subsided and I burst into laughter.
Actually, that credit card is LOL. What?
Mason is about to have a very unpleasant time. And after returning from the trip, a hellish scenario awaits him. I'm Emma, a 56-year-old office worker, and my husband Mason is 57 and works part-time. You might wonder why I married a part-timer like Mason, but he wasn't always one. Mason was laid off at 30 during a company downsizing. I thought Mason would find a new job quickly, but he had a proposal for me.
Our baby's due soon. I've been thinking, what if I become a house husband until childcare settles down a bit? That way, Emma, you can return to work smoothly. For a few years, you mean? Mason, are you sure about taking such a long break? Even if my return to work is smooth, won't it be hard for you to find a job later? I've gained some experience and skills so far.
The layoff and birth coincided. Childcare can be a legitimate reason for a career gap. It might affect my job search, but I think I can manage it with some effort.
Probably, Mason was right, considering his view. I know Mason has always been diligent at work. His layoff wasn't due to a lack of ability, but simply bad luck.
All right, but you have to do the housework properly and get back to work once childcare settles down.
I agreed to Mason's proposal, albeit with some reservations. However, this decision led to a turn for the worse. When our son Jackson was born, Mason kept his promise and worked hard at both housework and childcare. Thanks to that, I could return to work smoothly and focus on my job. But as Jackson turned 3, Mason and I often clashed over parenting.
Are you giving Jackson sweets again? He won't eat his meals, you know. And you bought him another toy, right? You're spoiling him too much. What can I do? Jackson wants sweets and toys. Should I make him suffer? That's just cruel. Learning to wait is important. What if he becomes a spoiled brat who can't handle not getting his way?
Mom's angry again. She says no to sweets and toys. I don't like Mom. Since I'm working and Mason is a house husband, Jackson spends more time with Mason. And Mason, spoiling Jackson, has made him a complete ally. It's sad not having my child on my side, but given the situation, it can't be helped. But apart from parenting, there was another issue.
Mason, you didn't clean up the lunch dishes again?
I'm busy with childcare. You wouldn't understand, being at work all day.
I get that you're busy, but this happens every day. I end up washing and cleaning up after work. Can't you at least soak them? They're always dry and hard to wash.
Mom's being fussy again. Scary, huh? I don't like Mom. Mason gradually stopped doing housework. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, he left everything halfway, and I ended up doing it all. I never intended to dump all the housework on Mason, just because he's a house husband. I used to help out, but Mason grew dependent on my assistance and eventually stopped doing anything. Well, Jackson's starting preschool soon, and it's about time for Mason to look for a job. Maybe he's just cherishing his time with Jackson before work starts. Thinking this, I stopped nagging Mason about housework and childcare. But even when Jackson started preschool and then elementary school, Mason didn't start job hunting.
Hey, Mason. Jackson's 10 now. Isn't it about time you start looking for a job? He's still only 10. Besides, if I start working, Jackson will be home alone till night. Don't you think that's sad? That's why I said we should practice leaving him alone for a bit. But you said it wasn't necessary because you're home and never let Jackson practice staying alone.
I can't leave Jackson alone. On the surface, it might seem like Mason is saying the right things. But I know better from his past actions. Mason is just using Jackson as an excuse because he doesn't want to work. He used to be diligent before being laid off, but it seems he's grown accustomed to not working and doesn't want to start again. Moreover, I'm just a regular office worker, and I don't earn that much. I understand you don't want to leave Jackson alone, Mason. But you know living off my salary alone is getting tough. Our savings we had until we were about 30 are dwindling. If this continues, we might not be able to afford food. Okay, I get it. But still, leaving Jackson alone.
How about you work part-time while Jackson is at school? That's reasonable, right?
Mason, reluctant to work, finally agreed to my suggestion and started working part-time. With Mason working part-time and us living frugally, we managed to escape the deficit. Though problems remain, at least for now, we can live a little more comfortably. But when Jackson became a high schooler, our problems increased.
Mason, where's this month's money? What? I already gave it to you. There's no way it's this little.
Once Jackson started working part-time in high school, he began buying his own things. It's embarrassing as a parent, but it gave us a little more breathing room in our budget. I thought we could even start saving a small amount, but Mason stopped contributing financially, plunging us back into hardship. It soon became clear what Mason was spending his money on.
What's this? It's fine. Got it cheap from someone I know. A motorcycle? That's cool.
Where did we have the room in our budget for this? I was speechless. Later, Jackson graduated from high school, worked for a while, and moved out at 22. However, he lived nearby and always came home on weekends.
Dad, where are we going today?
There's a famous pizza place in the mountains. Let's go there. Mason completely stopped doing housework. He and Jackson, having been inseparable since Jackson was young, were like friends. Now, influenced by Mason, Jackson rides motorcycles too, and they often leave me behind on weekends to go on rides. Well, I find it easier when they're not around, so it's fine by me. Dad, why did you marry Mom, who's so uninteresting? Why indeed? I totally chose the wrong person to marry, lol. I've become numb to overhearing such conversations. Jackson, at 26, got married. His wife, Lily, unlike Jackson, isn't the type to ride motorcycles around. She's more serious and hardworking, a bit like me. I've heard men are often attracted to women who resemble their mothers. Maybe Jackson subconsciously chose someone like me.
Dad, where are we going today?
There's a new fast food place. Want to check it out? Even after getting married, Jackson continued to go out with Mason on weekends. I wonder if it's okay to leave his new wife, Lily, like that. Maybe Lily tolerates it because, unlike Mason, Jackson does work properly. Don't you ever get complaints for not taking Mom along? Nope, never lol. Even if she did, I'd ignore her because she's a buzzkill lol. Do they not realize their conversation can be heard inside the house? Their usual banter continues. I've become so numb to it, I hardly react anymore. I usually don't pay much attention to Mason and Jackson, but one day something happened that I couldn't overlook. One weekend morning, I woke up to Mason preparing to go out early. Assuming it was just another outing with Jackson, I went back to sleep. When I woke up again and checked outside, the motorcycle was gone. They must have left early as usual. I was spending my day at home when Mason called in the afternoon.
I'm in Charleston. What souvenir would you like? What? Charleston? Can you make it back today? We're staying in Charleston today, touring Savannah in Georgia tomorrow, and planning to return the night after tomorrow.
Mason and Jackson often ride out on the motorcycle, but they always return the same day. Staying overnight is new.
Is Jackson with you? What about work on Monday?
Jackson and Lily are off today and tomorrow, and they took the day after off.
Wait, Lily's there too?
Yeah, so it's a family trip. So, I'm counting on you to house sit lol. It's not unusual for Mason and Jackson to leave me behind. But I was astounded they took Lily. Did she willingly go on this trip? While I was wrestling with these worries, Mason dropped a bombshell. Also, you're covering the trip expenses lol.
What do you mean?
I borrowed a credit card from your wallet lol.
You did what?
To think, a thief in the family. It's so disheartening. I've been somewhat indifferent towards Mason because he was spending his own salary. But using my credit card, our household money, is unforgivable. Does he have any idea how hard I worked to keep us afloat? I hurried to check my wallet. Then, my anger vanished, replaced by laughter.
The card you took wasn't the black one, but the silver one, right? Yes. Do you have any cash with you? You don't have your own credit card, do you? I have about $200 or so. Why? That's not enough for a 3-day trip. You'll have to ask Jackson to cover the rest. Emma, what are you talking about? Well, about that credit card, lol, it seems to be damaged, lol.
When I had to tell Mason, who was out having a good time without me, about the truth, I almost laughed, my voice shook, and my words even came out funny.
What? What's wrong with this credit card? It's not broken.
This credit card, it seems to have a magnetic malfunction or something. It can't be read, lol.
Why do you even have such a credit card?
Didn't my wallet have 2 credit cards? I manage my money by separating fixed and variable expenses. The one you took is for fixed expenses like utilities and subscription services. I realized it was damaged when I tried to use it by mistake, but since it's not used for reading at supermarkets or restaurants, I didn't bother reissuing it.
What? So, this credit card is useless?
That's right.
Wait. I told Jackson and Lily that I'd pay for the hotel and meals with this card. How can I tell them it's actually unusable? It's embarrassing.
Mason intended to show off with someone else's money. It's another pathetic tale. I don't know. Maybe you can figure something out with your $200? Don't forget the souvenirs. Mason was still fussing on the other end, but I ignored him and hung up. I was alone until Mason returned from the trip. I decided to fully enjoy my time without Mason. 2 days later, in the evening, Mason returned home a bit earlier than planned.
Emma, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea how terrible our situation was?
Yeah, make sure you pay back the money for the trip. It seemed Jackson and Lily were with him. Mason and Jackson started venting their unreasonable anger towards me from the entrance, even though they hadn't seen me yet. My peaceful time alone was over. I slowly made my way to the entrance.
Stop making a scene at the entrance, come inside first.
I ushered Mason, Jackson, and Lily into the house and arranged us around the table, with Mason and Jackson facing me and Lily. Mason and Jackson were frowning and crossing their arms, looking angry. Lily also looked displeased.
Keeping a damaged credit card, even though you're always on my case about things. Even you can't manage your own stuff, Emma. Make sure you pay back the money I fronted for the trip. We went because you said you'd pay for the expenses.
I was exasperated by Mason's irrelevant arguments and Jackson's fixation on money. There were too many things to address, I didn't even know where to start. Mason and Jackson continued to complain at me. As I was trying to decide what to say, Lily suddenly burst out angrily.
Jackson! Enough already! It's embarrassing. Why are you getting mad?
Lily's sudden outburst left Mason and Jackson confused. However, since Lily and I probably have similar personalities, I had an inkling of what was going on. I was certain of it when Lily got furious.
Don't you two get why Lily is angry? What? You understand, Emma? Lily doesn't like motorcycles like Mason and Jackson. Being dragged around on the back of a motorcycle for hours must have been hard for her. Plus, it's not enjoyable to have your FIL tag along on what's supposed to be a couple's trip, not to mention being forced to take off work and ending up with a stolen credit card that doesn't work. That must have been tough for Lily. Am I right? Yes, that's pretty much it. Lily, what are you talking about? You always complain about wanting to go places, so I took you. Lily didn't want that. You just forced her to join your hobby. She just agreed with what I said. To add to what I said earlier, I thought she was also part of this trip. She was left behind, right? I can't forgive that either.
Lily glared at Mason and Jackson, who awkwardly looked away. It seems Lily's sullenness wasn't about my credit card being unusable, but rather directed at Mason and Jackson's selfishness.
Jackson, I've decided. I want a divorce, and since both your parents are here, I'm saying it now.
What? Why all of a sudden?
It's not sudden. It's okay for you to go out with Mason, but you always spend a lot and don't do anything at home. I just wanted a bit of our time, a little consideration for our relationship. You don't understand that at all, and I don't see a future in this.
Dad does the same, and he's not divorced from Mom.
Jackson, you're following the wrong example.
Apparently, Jackson was too influenced by Mason and became just like him. Lily's grievances with Jackson were the same as mine with Mason. The difference between me and Lily is that she decided to leave Jackson within a year. Lily's declaration of divorce gave me courage. I support Lily's decision to divorce. Accept it, Jackson. Emma, what are you thinking? Not supporting your own son and agreeing to a divorce? Also, I want a divorce too. What? My sudden declaration of divorce surprised all three of them. The word divorce, which I had never even considered, came out impulsively, and I was shocked by my own statement. The behavior of Mason and Jackson must have unconsciously pushed me to my limits. That's how it is, so you two go back to Jackson's house. Lily, stay here for now. With unstoppable momentum, I sent Mason and Jackson out of the house. Lily, shall we proceed with the divorce proceedings together? Feel free to use this house until the divorce is finalized. Thank you. Lily was confused by the unexpected turn of events. However, having a common adversary, we quickly bonded and started working together towards the divorce. Afterward, Jackson and Lily quickly finalized their divorce, and although it took longer for me and Mason, we eventually managed to divorce as well. Once Jackson and Lily's divorce was settled, Lily moved out of the house. Though we lived together for only a month, it was surprisingly enjoyable, and we still keep in touch. When my divorce was finalized, Mason and Jackson started living together, and I left the house. Mason began job hunting to support himself, but having worked only part-time for nearly 30 years, finding a full-time job at almost 60 seemed unlikely. He's still working part-time. Jackson continues his job, but at 27, his income isn't substantial. As a result, Mason and Jackson appear to be living a deficit life, planning to move into a small, cheap apartment together. This situation will likely make Mason realize how hard I had to work to manage our life, and Jackson will understand the challenges of living with Mason. I started living alone after leaving the house. Now, I can spend my earnings solely on myself. Today, I bought a cake on my way home from work. Such luxury was unimaginable in my previous life, but now I am enjoying my days. Once I nearly died, and now that I've managed to recover, I feel reborn. I'm starting a new life, and I don't want to take care of some old hag. He said coldly, despite Victor's recovery from his illness being a direct result of me becoming a donor. Looking back, I had never received a single word of gratitude from Victor. In the divorce papers mercilessly handed to me, Victor's signature was already there. Yet, I wasn't shocked, just irritated and anxious. Since he regained his mobility, Victor had been gallivanting around, and I had been harboring suspicions for some time. And now, I had fallen ill. I had stomach cancer. It was progressing slowly, so it was not critical, but I still had to start treatment with surgery and chemotherapy. Full of anxiety, I never imagined being pushed away like this. All my love and trust for Victor vanished in an instant. The hard part is, to Layla, he's undeniably her only dad. I felt guilty about becoming a single parent, but I just didn't have the energy to try and mend things with Victor now that my own battle with illness is beginning. I signed the divorce papers Victor brought and returned them to him. A month later, Victor, having left numerous unanswered calls, finally barged into my hospital room and blurted out something shocking. My name is Karina, a 29-year-old housewife. I had been happily living with Victor, a year my senior, and our 5-year-old daughter Layla for 7 years. Even after getting married, I continued working full-time until I went on maternity leave and then resigned from my job. I wanted to take my time raising Layla, but with the recession and Victor's salary alone not being enough, I had to return to work as soon as Layla could go to daycare. I got a job at an apparel company run by Victor's sister-in-law, Madison. They were looking for an office worker, and my previous experience made me a quick hire. Despite being family, I wasn't coddled, and the workplace was great with many colleagues who also had kids, making it easy to discuss childcare and take leave for emergencies. However, juggling work, household chores, and parenting was incredibly challenging. In the mornings, I prepared breakfast for Victor and Layla, made lunch for Victor, sent him off, dropped Layla at daycare, then headed to work. After work, I picked up Layla, shopped, cleaned, bathed Layla, and prepared dinner. Victor returned home just as Layla finished eating, and I prepared his meal while putting Layla to bed. Despite the hectic days, Victor wasn't very cooperative with housework or childcare. Even when Layla had a fever and I was busy caring for her, he'd casually ask, "Where's my breakfast?" If I asked him to shop for dinner because I had to work late, he'd complain, "I'm tired from work." Exhausted myself, I didn't have the energy to argue and ended up handling everything alone. Everything changed abruptly. Victor failed some tests at a company health check and was strongly advised to undergo further tests. He didn't want to since he felt fine, but started noticing odd symptoms like unexplained bruises and bleeding gums when brushing teeth. Ignoring it could lead to something serious. Considering Layla's future, I insisted on a thorough examination for Victor, which revealed he had leukemia.
Why me?
Victor was shocked, hearing the familiar name of the disease. But leukemia isn't incurable anymore. There are many cases of remission through chemotherapy and bone marrow transplants, and many patients return to normal life. I decided to support Victor, who was on the verge of despair, and accompany him through his treatment. He took a leave from work and was admitted to the hospital immediately. As for me, I had to juggle work, household chores, childcare, and now Victor's treatment. It was me who reached the limit first. The stress of hospitalization made Victor even more irritable towards me. I knew it was just him lashing out, but being busy with work, looking after Layla, doing household chores, and visiting the hospital in my spare time, I was honestly exhausted. It was then Madison, my sister-in-law, reached out to me. "Why don't you live with me? I can help with the household and taking care of Layla." Madison, the president of our company, was always on the front line of sales. She never left everything to her subordinates and always tried to catch the voices from the field. That's why her staff felt close to her and found it easy to exchange opinions. Knowing how busy she was, I felt guilty. "But Madison, you're busy too. If you collapse now, the one who suffers the most will be Layla, right? I'll help as much as I can with Victor's support. Rely on others when you can." Madison's firm words made me break down in tears. I was anxious about Victor, Layla's future, and my health, and Madison's presence and words were a great relief. Victor's parents had already passed away, and Madison lived alone in her parents' house. "It's too big for one person. I didn't want to sell it because of the memories with my parents, but I'm glad you two are here." Madison warmly welcomed me and Layla. Living with her was very comfortable. Our good relationship made it feel like I got a sister. Madison, who had been living alone for a long time, was good at household chores. Her active help made life easier than before. Then, there was a hope in Victor's treatment. I was a match as a bone marrow donor for him. After Victor's diagnosis, both Madison and I tested for bone marrow donation. The odds of finding a match are 1 in 4 for siblings, and 1 in several hundred to several thousand for unrelated individuals. We despaired when Madison wasn't a match, but I was, and Victor was overjoyed. I had to be hospitalized for a few days for the bone marrow extraction. During that time, of course, I had to take time off from work, and I couldn't take care of Layla. Both of these troubled Madison, but she didn't show any disgust. "I'm really grateful you're doing this for my brother. I'll take care of everything, so don't worry about anything but your own health," she said. With Madison's support, I underwent the surgery to donate bone marrow to Victor. He had to stay in a sterile room for a while post-surgery to avoid infections. I was discharged after a few days and, thanks to Madison's generosity, took a couple more days off before returning to work. The hematopoietic stem cells transplanted into Victor began to work properly, and after a few weeks, he was able to move to the general ward. When I took Layla to visit Victor in the general ward, a nurse was in the room. Seeing Layla after a long time, Victor smiled happily. "Victor is recovering well. He's young and strong, so he should be able to return to society soon if he continues to progress well. Thank you so much for everything. After expressing our gratitude, the nurse smiled and left the room. True to her words, Victor's condition stabilized, and a few months later, he was discharged. He still needed to rest at home for a while, so the four of us, including Madison, began living together at the in-laws' house. I once again took on the responsibilities of work, house chores, childcare, and caring for Victor, but it was less burdensome than before, thanks to Madison's presence. Madison, who can speak her mind clearly to Victor, told him,
You don't have to overdo it, but try doing some household chores as a part of your rehabilitation.
Reluctantly, Victor began to help around the house. However, knowing his physical condition, I often ended up helping him, and eventually, Victor seemed to understand that if he did things slowly, I would come to help him, and he stopped doing even what he could.
I still feel tired.
He said it as an excuse, not even trying to get up from the sofa. Once, when a delivery arrived while I was preparing dinner and I couldn't answer the door, I asked him to do it, only to receive a heavy sigh and a complaint.
You're rough with people, even though I'm supposed to be resting.
I couldn't help but think.
It's just this much.
But Victor's pain was something only he could understand. So, believing his words, I tried to do as much as I could, even if it meant pushing myself. Perhaps because of overexerting myself again, my health had been deteriorating recently. Eating had become more difficult, and Madison even worried that I might have lost weight. By this time, Victor had recovered almost completely and had returned to work. Even though Victor no longer needed care, it didn't mean that household chores and childcare decreased. Even as my health worsened, Victor, perhaps reacting to having been told to rest, began going out alone more on his days off. He seemed not to notice my poor health and continued to neglect household chores. Once, when I asked where he was going and with whom, he became angry, saying, I have my own private life too. Eventually, due to stress, I started experiencing painful stomach cramps and, encouraged by Madison, decided to undergo a medical checkup. With Victor having been seriously ill, I thought it was best to take early action for Layla's sake. The result was that I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, it seemed to be progressing slowly, but I still needed to be hospitalized for a while and undergo harsh chemotherapy. Layla looked anxious about my sudden hospitalization, but Victor was out and didn't stay by her side. Instead, Madison was with her. To not get in the way of my preparation for hospitalization, Madison took Layla out shopping. While I was silently getting ready, Victor came back.
What's this, going on a trip?
Victor asked nonchalantly. I snapped back, unable to contain my anger.
I have stomach cancer.
Stomach cancer. I've been feeling sick lately.
I went for a checkup today, and that was the diagnosis. I need to be hospitalized.
Hospitalized.
What about the housework?
Will Madison handle it? I was stunned that his first reaction to hearing about my hospitalization was not a concern for me. Indeed, the slow progression of my illness meant it wasn't a matter of immediate life or death. But still, facing a wife who was about to undergo harsh chemotherapy, his first concern was about the housework, which seemed incredibly insensitive.
Well, maybe this is for the best.
What? Divorce me.
Ha!
His sudden demand left me bewildered. After all the dedication I gave him during his illness, he drastically changed his attitude the moment I fell ill.
I was reborn after nearly dying and recovering. I don't want to spend my life taking care of an old hag.
Victor's recovery was thanks to me being a donor. Yet I realized now he had never shown any gratitude. He callously presented me with divorce papers, already signed by him.
You don't even bother to put on makeup at home, you're no longer a woman to me. But I've been so busy with work, house chores, and childcare, I haven't had time for makeup. That's just an excuse. And now cancer? I can't deal with all this. Quickly write your name here.
Victor yelled, and I was upset that he even said that to me. He shouted at me to sign the papers quickly. Despite the anxiety of my cancer diagnosis, I wasn't shocked. Ever since Victor regained his mobility, he had been out and about, and my mistrust had been growing. The fact that I was now sick meant all my love and trust for Victor had vanished. The hardest part was that Victor was undeniably Layla's only dad. I felt guilty about becoming a single parent, but with my upcoming battle with illness, I had no energy left to mend things with Victor. I signed the divorce papers he brought and returned them to him. "We're nothing more than strangers now," Victor said, smiling satisfactorily as he saw my signature. "Hey, are you done? Don't just barge in here. Because you're taking too long." Suddenly, a young woman I didn't know appeared at the entrance. She was dressed in a flashy one-piece dress and wore heavy makeup, looking beautiful. But upon closer inspection, I recognized her. "Are you the nurse from Victor's hospital stay?" She was Victor's attending nurse, although unrecognizable in her casual clothes. Apparently, she was his mistress. "Yeah. She supported me devotedly when I was sick, unlike you," Victor boasted proudly. Supporting a patient is a nurse's job. And it was absurd to compare her to me. "Just get out of this house. It's my family home, after all." He was brazen now. Though it was Victor's family home, it was under Madison's name now. But with the divorce, Madison and I were no longer related. The thought of leaving Madison, who Layla adored and who had been so kind and reliable, saddened me more than leaving Victor. But there was no choice. I packed my few belongings into a suitcase, getting ready for the hospital stay. I had no love left for Victor and wanted to leave as soon as possible. As I silently continued my preparations, Madison and Layla, who had been out shopping, returned. "We're home." "Oh, who's this?" Madison, surprised to see the unfamiliar woman, and Layla, clinging to her and looking around, didn't seem to understand the situation. So I said it clearly. "Victor and I are getting divorced." "Huh?" Madison looked as shocked as I felt. Then, to Layla, she said, "Have this snack on the way." Handing her a snack she apparently just bought, and sent her to the next room. With only adults left, Madison immediately glared at Victor. "What are you thinking?" Confronted by Madison instead of me, Victor momentarily backed off. "He's divorcing me to start a new life with that woman. Since we'll be strangers, he wants me to leave." Hearing my words, Madison's eyes widened in disbelief. "At a time like this, how can you be so selfish? You're the one who should leave. Don't ever show your face to me again," Madison said firmly, and Victor left the house with a click of his tongue. The woman glanced down at me with a triumphant smile and followed Victor. "Karina, I'm so sorry." Once they were gone, Madison looked at me with a face full of regret. It wasn't her fault, yet I felt guilty for making her feel this way. "Please don't look like that. You've done so much for me, and I can't thank you enough." I felt somewhat relieved that Madison had decisively cut ties with Victor. "Even if you divorce Victor, I'm still on your side, Karina." The house Victor lived in before falling ill was already vacated. Now kicked out by Madison, Victor probably had nowhere to live but was likely planning to move in with that woman. Although he had an insurance and subsidies, he wouldn't have much savings left after his illness. Well, he's a stranger to me now, anyway. Victor apparently filed the divorce papers immediately. We were no longer a couple, but Madison still supported me. I was about to be hospitalized and thought about sending Layla to my parents, but Madison offered to take care of her. "She's already anxious without her mom. A change of environment would only make it worse." Since her work was stable at the moment, Madison insisted on helping me, so I gratefully accepted. When I was about a month into my hospital stay, my mobile phone rang. It was Victor, and of course, I ignored the call. Despite my ignoring, he kept calling repeatedly. When Madison visited me, I told her about it. She said Victor had also called her and even had come to the in-laws' house when ignored. She told him it was impossible to meet me since I was in the hospital. "Even if Victor says anything, ignore him. It's too late for him to realize your worth." Madison's words made me feel supported. After saying goodbye to Madison, Victor appeared in my hospital room. How did you find me here? I hadn't told Victor which hospital I was in. After all, he never asked. I went to the family home today. I saw Madison leaving with flowers, so I thought she might be visiting you. He apparently followed Madison here. Victor's desperation was frightening, and as I wondered what his motive was, he clung to me. My illness has relapsed. It turns out, Victor's leukemia had relapsed. While a bone marrow transplant could lead to remission, it wasn't without the risk of relapse.
So, become my donor again.
His convenient request left me dumbfounded. Here I was, battling cancer, and my ex-husband, who abandoned me when I fell ill, returned as soon as his illness recurred. It was just too convenient. I don't know, maybe it's karma?
That's cruel.
And don't you have someone more dedicated to support you? Saying this, Victor looked frustrated. Apparently, the moment she learned of his relapse, his mistress had promptly broken up with him. She reportedly said she didn't want to deal with a sick person in her personal life.
I have no one but you to rely on now.
Victor pleaded, but I was resolute in my response. Absolutely not.
You're going to abandon me in my illness.
You abandoned me first, remember? Victor fell silent at my words. Besides, I'm currently consulting a lawyer about you.
A lawyer?
Yes, for the infidelity compensation and Layla's child support. I'm making sure you pay both in full.
But I'm sick.
So am I. As our unproductive argument continued, a doctor, alerted by the commotion, came into the room. He restrained Victor, who was trying to grab me, and took him away. Victor was later handed over to the police. After being interrogated, a restraining order was issued against him from approaching me. Hearing the noise, Madison returned to the room. She seemed thoroughly disgusted by Victor's selfish behavior. I asked Madison to testify, and after consulting with the lawyer, I decided to sue Victor and his mistress for compensation. While Victor was reluctant, his mistress readily agreed to pay as a settlement. Since then, I had been slowly recovering. Madison had been devotedly supporting me, and Layla, though young, had been helping me without any complaints. The cancer was successfully removed without any signs of spreading elsewhere. Meanwhile, Victor still hadn't found a donor and was living in fear every day. He managed to pay my compensation by depleting his savings but seemed unable to afford Layla's child support. Since he couldn't pay it, he was also not allowed to visit her, leading him to battle his illness alone. Madison and I continued to have a good relationship. When I considered moving out with Layla after my recovery, thinking not to impose further on Madison, she scolded me, telling me not to worry about unnecessary things while recovering. She insisted I use her money freely until I saved enough, so we continued living together for a while. Since Layla had grown very fond of Madison, even after saving enough money, we decided to rent a condo nearby. We visited each other's homes and had become like best friends. Despite the terrible separation from Victor and my own illness, having someone like Madison who steadfastly supported me was a blessing. I hoped Layla grows up to be a strong, kind woman with a sense of justice like Madison, and I looked forward to spending more time together.
You didn't even do the housework, you old hag! Get out of my house, you trash! The scene that greeted me when I returned from an overseas trip, taken for a change of scenery, was brutally heart-wrenching. My belongings were piled up like trash, and there was his affair partner, lounging in our home as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Such treatment was just too much, but I knew it was too late to turn back. Understood. With no tears left, I walked away from that room. Little did he know, all his past mistakes were about to come back to haunt him. My name is Mila. I'm 41. No kids, just living happily with my husband. My husband, Spencer, is 3 years older than me, and we met at an old job. I majored in design at a university with an arts program. Our university had a lot of connections with the entertainment industry, so through an acquaintance from my student days, I started working part-time as an assistant at a TV company. The pay was double that of other part-time jobs. Plus, I got to see the behind the scenes of well-known TV programs, which was incredibly exciting. I can't say it too loudly, but I've talked with many actors and actresses. Caught up in this exciting world, I continued working there after graduating. My design studies didn't come in much handy, but every day was busy and fresh. Unlike a regular job, I usually came home in the morning after work. I started sleeping in the mornings more than at nights. I managed to keep up with the pace in my youth, but there were limits to my energy. Around the age of 38, I began feeling increasingly down and couldn't shake off the tiredness. It felt like there was always a fog over my heart. I tried to keep up a cheerful front, but even faking a smile became hard. That's when my now husband, who was the first to notice something was off, stepped in. On a day when work ended early, he asked, "Want to grab a drink tonight? Been tough lately, Mila. Anything bothering you?" My pride made me say, "Nothing's wrong," even though that wasn't true. But as we drank, my true feelings slipped out. I should be enjoying my job, but it's just so hard. "You know, I really like your smile, Mila. It brightens up everything around. But it hurts me too, not seeing it." It was the first time anyone had said something like that to me. I started confiding in him more and more, and before I knew it, we were dating. His kindness became my comfort. Before turning 40, after discussing it with him, I quit my job at the TV company, and we got married. He supported me in deciding when to leave that hectic job. He's truly a dependable husband. As we started our life together, I wanted to pursue what I really loved, so I looked for work. He said, "I've got your back, Mila." Now, I'm a full-time remote illustrator. I plan website layouts, design posters, and other advertising materials. Many clients I met through my old job like my designs, and I've been getting a lot of requests lately. I'm making a stable income, which is really satisfying. But I'm careful not to overdo it and look after my health. However, about a year into our marriage, as my work prospered, my husband's attitude began to change. "Hey, how long are you planning to not work? You're better now, so get a job already."
"But I told you before, I'm working full-time remotely in design."
"Was that so? But remote work? That's just taking it easy, right?" At first, my husband was kind, but he started to become harsh towards me. He still works as a TV staff member, so his return times and work hours are irregular. In contrast, I had set my own working hours, so unless there were remote meetings or urgent calls, the rest was up to me. Naturally, the lifestyle gap between my husband and me widened. I think my husband was jealous of me always being home. Whenever I talked about work, he'd laugh it off mockingly. Lately, work's been going really well. Yeah, no need to pretend."
"What do you mean?"
"You're not really working, are you? Just lazing around at home all day. Here I am working so hard." He'd always make such sarcastic comments. All I wanted was a normal conversation.
"It's not a lie. I mean, I'm earning, so I can support myself."
"We'll see about that. Oh, right. You're getting money from your parents, right? Your family's rich after all. Must be nice." That's the kind of thing he'd end up saying. Gradually, we stopped talking altogether. Of course, I'm grateful to my husband. If he hadn't reached out to me back then, I wouldn't be where I am now. I owe my livelihood to him. But being told such things every day, it's enough to make anyone dislike him. To avoid hating my husband any further, I began distancing myself. We stopped seeing each other's faces and talking. Since we didn't communicate at all, The last call from my husband on my mobile phone was from 2 months ago. As time passed, he rarely returned home. Thinking this couldn't go on, I struggled with how to approach him, now so aggressive. After much thought, I decided to be honest and texted him. "How about we have dinner together tonight?" His reply was indifferent. "Sure, whatever." But inside, I was happy about our first meal together in a long time. I decided to cook with enthusiasm. I'd rarely cooked for him before, only a few times when we just started dating, maybe on occasional holidays. Given his job, he often had dinner at work, and with his unpredictable return times, it seemed pointless to cook. A meal together after so long, and a home-cooked meal at that. So today, I was determined to make something delicious. I cook with all my heart, something I actually enjoyed lately, being home all the time. I'd gotten used to preparing all 3 meals. I'd become quite skilled at cooking without realizing it. Tonight's menu was beef stew as the main dish, with a few side dishes. Beef stew was his favorite. Seeing the trash, it seemed he'd been eating a lot of greasy junk food lately, so I thought something warm and soothing would be nice, and chose this menu. I set the table and waited for my husband's return. Just then, my mobile phone rang. It was my husband. "What's up?" "Oh, I can't make it back tonight." "What?" His abrupt words weren't what I expected. I was speechless. "Some urgent work came up, so I can make it." "But dinner?" "Just eat it yourself." His tone grew harsher, like a rubbing salt into my wounded heart. "And you know what? It really ticks me off seeing you always at home." After being told that, I searched for a response, but he unilaterally hung up with a, "Then, bye." After all the courage it took to invite him to dinner, I felt like my feelings were being trampled on, and it became hard to breathe. That night, I ate the meal I cooked alone, but I don't remember the taste because I couldn't stop crying. Since then, his words stuck in my head, and I couldn't concentrate on work. No matter what I did, I couldn't feel happy. During this time, after a meeting with Garcia, who I work with, a conversation came up. "Garcia, did you get a tan?" "Yes, actually I went on a trip recently." "Oh, with friends?" "No, solo travel." I casually asked, as I could see Garcia's sunburned skin even through the screen. She apparently enjoys solo travel and often goes on trips, both domestic and international. "It's great, it feels liberating from everyday life, plus I don't have to worry about anyone else." That made me think maybe she's right. And then I decided, I'm going on a trip starting today. I'll be back in 3 nights and 4 days. A few days later, I texted my husband. Yes, I decided to take my first ever solo trip. Though it's brief, my husband would have the house to himself, and putting physical distance might be important. I wanted to refresh my feelings. It's nice that my work can be done anywhere with just a laptop. I finished most of my work before leaving, taking my laptop only for emergencies.
"Taking a trip, huh? Must be nice. Well, leave the house to me."
That was his reply. Reading it made me feel down again. No, I'll focus on myself during the trip. I switched my mood and boarded the plane. After a few hours of flying, I arrived at my destination. The unfamiliar, foreign atmosphere was exhilarating. The blazing sun and gentle climate lifted my spirits. Even the wind in the heat felt pleasant. And of course, many places had English menus and service, so communication wasn't much of a worry. For 3 nights and 4 days, I went to the beach and shopped at leisure. Lying on the beach, watching the sunset was the best part of my trip. If you ask what I did, well, nothing special. But those simple moments were enjoyable. Time flew by, and soon I was back home, arriving around 8 p.m. As the next day was garbage collection day, I went to throw away some stuff I forgot to discard at the airport. Turning on the light, I saw a pile of trash. I wondered if someone was moving out, but then I noticed something familiar in a trash bag. Is that? It was my cherished stuffed animals and knickknacks. Looking closer, all the trash bags around were filled with my belongings. What was going on? I hurried home and opened the front door. Entering quickly, I saw my husband lounging on the sofa with a young woman next to him.
Hey, you should have told me you were coming back.
Seeing me, the first thing my husband said was this. I had already guessed from the sound of a woman's voice at the entrance, but seeing them sitting together made me shiver. I told you I'll be back today, didn't I? And why are my belongings in the trash? Looking around the house, it was clear that my things had been thrown away. I confronted him directly.
Ah, you saw that, huh?
My husband said, scratching his head in annoyance. Seeing his attitude, my anger was about to reach its limit.
Well, it's all useless, right? This isn't your home anymore.
What? I didn't understand. This was our home, where we lived together since getting married. There's no way it wasn't my home. Then my husband said something shocking.
I'm divorcing a woman who doesn't do housework. Get out of my house, you trash.
I was so stunned by his words that my mind went blank.
Well, that's how it is. You leave your husband to go on a leisurely trip? Stop taking things for granted.
The woman sitting next to him looked at me awkwardly. I couldn't even hear the words being thrown at me anymore. It was as if it was all my fault. Sure, there were times when my mental state was unstable, and I depended a lot on my husband from quitting my previous job until my current work stabilized. I'm more than grateful for that. But I did my share, handling the housework while he was busy with work, even helping with his paperwork. This treatment was just too much. But my husband turned his back on me as if he had nothing more to say, again focusing on the TV. He put his arm around a woman next to him, cuddling close. In front of that scene, I couldn't even cry. I had reached my limit.
Understood.
With that single word, I left the house. It was night, so I felt bad but called my parents for a ride. Thanks to them coming by car, I could retrieve my belongings left at the garbage area. I was so grateful my parents' house was nearby. Mom, who came to pick me up, and Dad, who was getting ready to sleep at home, didn't ask what happened. I mean, they probably guessed from the situation when I called them at night with bags full of my things. I couldn't sleep at all that night. Lying under the familiar smell of my childhood home's white ceiling, I was contemplating something. It was the biggest strategy of my life. The next morning, I started working on what I had thought of the night before. Make phone calls to various places. I made dozens of phone calls throughout the day. By evening, I was ready for a break and was sipping on iced tea I bought on my trip when my phone rang, just as I expected.
What the hell is this? What are you thinking?
What do you mean? What am I thinking?
Don't play dumb. What's this about our house contract ending?
When I answered, his shouting was so loud, it echoed through the speaker. I knew exactly what he was talking about, but pretended not to. Oh, I asked for the contract to be terminated. They said it could be done by the end of this month if we hurry.
What? You can just do that.
No, it can be done. The house we lived in was a rental condo we rented together. Moreover, unknown to my husband, the actual owner was my dad. I thought he might not like it if he knew my dad owned the condo, so I pretended it belonged to a friend. Never thought it would come in handy like this.
But, I'm the named tenant. You can't just do that without the tenant's consent.
What? What are you talking about? You're the one who made me change it to my name and pay the rent.
Oh.
He let out a foolish sound. Originally, the house was in my husband's name, and he paid the rent. Initially, I was unemployed and didn't have financial freedom, so we did it that way. But when I started earning through remote work, he told me,
Then you pay the rent.
He doesn't even remember that for the past 3 or 4 months, I have been the one paying. How oblivious can he be? You kept saying it's your house, but that house is truly mine in the real sense. When I said that, my husband let out a yell as if trying to intimidate me. I've always wanted to do this to him.
You really paid it yourself?
Of course, I am earning at least $30,000 a month.
$30,000?
His confused mother was met with my firm response. Then he let out a sound of astonishment. Come to think of it, I never told him my income, thinking he might get jealous. Well, it's good that I've been paying the rent, considering I'll need the money soon. I added that casually.
Need money? What do you mean?
You know what I'm talking about, right? Compensation for 3 people.
Oh,
he finally let out a sound of defeat. In fact, my husband was having affairs with 2 other women besides me. I recognized the woman at our house. Last night, I desperately tried to remember the past. I had worked with her a few times. She was a young model at an entertainment agency, still unknown but beautiful. Using my TV industry contacts, I contacted her, only to find out she believed she had broken up with me and was already engaged to him. But she revealed something I never expected. She told me a story that I had never imagined. She suspected there was another woman. When I asked her about this woman and contacted her, it turned out she was also in a relationship with my husband. Moreover, she too believed they were engaged. She was a young, up-and-coming talent. So my husband had relations with me, the model and the talent, and he was practically engaged to 2 of them. When I found this out, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. More horrifyingly, the engagement rings he gave each of us were probably recycled, because the engagement ring I had kept in our room had disappeared. And when I asked both women about their rings, they described the same one I had. Knowing this, both the women he had affairs with were understandably shocked and dismayed. A strange solidarity formed among the 3 of us, and we agreed that demanding compensation was fair. If you hadn't pretended to be engaged, I would have been the only one demanding compensation. This is what happens when you put on airs like that.
That's...
His voice, sounding defeated, was quite amusing to hear. I felt sorry for him, but it was all his own doing.
Please, I beg you, I'll cut ties with the other women. Just don't leave me, Mila. If you leave me, I won't be able to recover.
My husband pleaded with a voice louder than ever. Even now, his attempts to save himself are just revolting. After toying with my feelings to this extent, it's unbelievable he can say such things. I am grateful to you.
If you are, then...
Thank you for setting me free. From now on, I won't be seeing you ever again. Goodbye. I heard a faint,
Wait a minute!
but I didn't care and ended the call. Since my husband never listened to me, I felt justified in returning the favor. He kept calling persistently afterward, so I blocked his number and ignored him completely. Ultimately, my husband fell into the hell of paying compensations of his actions. Later, through a lawyer, I managed to get a divorce. The other women who were his affair partners apparently broke off their engagements too. That was expected. The house lease was successfully terminated, and I made sure he moved out quickly. I had a moving company retrieve my belongings, so that was a relief. However, my husband tried to contact me through text, WhatsApp, and various other methods, so I canceled my mobile phone service. That cut off all ties with him. I later heard that he became a person of caution among many production companies and agencies, forcing him to quit his job at the TV company. Now, I can laugh and say he was truly a hopeless case. As for me, I'm now living abroad. I'm currently dating an Italian man. Ever since that trip, solo travel abroad became my hobby, and I took trips whenever I could. On one such trip to Italy, I met my current boyfriend, who approached me. Considering my past experience, I'm being cautious about marriage, but I'm slowly closing the distance between us. Work is going well, and I'm enjoying love anew.
I'm Christina. Right now, I'm being demanded for money over the phone.
So bring $5,500 to the park right now. You got that?
A man yells from the other end of the line. He doesn't identify himself, nor does he specify which park. Moreover, without any reason or introduction, he just keeps repeating, bring $5,500. Displaying his foolishness without any shame. That thought crossed my mind.
Hey, are you listening?
His sudden shout startles me. Then, I hesitated before replying, yes, I'm listening?
Then hurry up and get to the park.
Before that, just, one thing. Who are you? When I asked that, the man on the other end suddenly fell silent. It seems he thought it would be bad if his identity was revealed. I thought to myself, surely he understands that much, when suddenly the man started yelling at me again.
Who cares who I am? Just bring the money quickly.
A line straight out of a template. There seemed no point in continuing the conversation, so I ventured a guess. I've been thinking from the start. You're Victor, aren't you? The man on the phone stumbled over his words. Right. I knew who the man was from the beginning. The caller was my husband's brother. In other words, my brother-in-law, Victor. I recognized his voice. But Victor called me from his own mobile phone to mine. Did he really think I wouldn't recognize him? I was fully astonished. But anyway, why was Victor demanding money from me? I couldn't understand. As I was pondering this, Victor said,
You figured it out, huh?
Of course, you're calling from your own mobile phone.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true.
Victor laughed awkwardly. As if to brush it off, I sighed and asked, So, what's your real business?
It's related to the money I mentioned earlier.
Victor began his detailed story after this preface. Victor and my husband Edwards both work at the same metalworking factory. The factory is run by Edwards' family, with most of the executives being Edwards' relatives. Since Edwards' father is a president, Victor and Edward are in line to take over the factory. So Victor and Edwards are both working as executive candidates. According to Victor's story, Edwards seems to be misusing his position for fraud. Fake transactions, really, Victor? I exclaimed out loud. Then Victor, in a calm voice, said,
That's right. Edwards embezzled company money. It adds up to $5,500.
No way! I was speechless, but at the same time, I thought of something. Edwards has never been obsessed with money. He's not interested in brands and has almost no desire for material things. He doesn't engage in expensive hobbies or drink alcohol. The only thing he spends money on is gaming. And that doesn't cost much. So, the allowance I give him should be sufficient. So what did he use $5,500 for? He's not the type to cheat, so I had no idea. In other words, I couldn't believe Edwards would embezzle. So this must be a lie from Victor. That's what I concluded. Come to think of it, Victor is a careless and not very bright person. He loves gambling and has even spent most of his salary on it. Of course, that's what I heard from Edwards. So there might be some inaccuracies, but it's more credible than Victor's own words. Moreover, I heard that Victor has borrowed money from Edwards several times. He always paid it back, but he might not be able to do so someday. Considering all these things, it's natural to think this is a lie from Victor. Victor must be in financial trouble now, but for some reason, he couldn't borrow from Edwards. He couldn't borrow from others because he would have to repay them. So he thought of getting money from me by half-threatening me, thinking he wouldn't have to pay it back. That's it, I was certain. As I silently thought about all this, Victor said, Are you listening? Oh yes, I'm just shocked.
I thought so. That's why I want to handle it privately and ask you to secretly bring the money.
I see. Is that so?
Yes. So bring the money now.
Victor continued speaking. I realized I might end up having to give him the money. That would be unacceptable. I needed to think of something, and then an idea struck me. So I asked Victor, do you have any evidence?
Evidence?
Yes, evidence that Edwards embezzled the money. I thought this would surely throw Victor off his game as he doesn't think things through deeply. But surprisingly, Victor responded,
I have evidence, but I can't show it right now.
Then I can't give you the money.
Okay, fine. Let's meet tomorrow at the company office.
You'll show me the evidence?
Yes, but you understand, right?
For now, I'll see the evidence and then decide.
Great. Once you see the evidence, you'll give the money, okay?
With that insistence from Victor, I ended the call. Probably Victor was planning to fabricate evidence now. Anyway, I would find out the truth by asking Edwards, but there was one problem. Edwards was not here. He's currently in France. At the instruction of a car manufacturer that deals with Edwards' factory, he went to France to supervise a parts factory there. Moreover, he's in a rural area with poor connections, so I can't contact him while he's there. This is troublesome, not being able to contact him at a time like this. Naturally, Victor must have timed this. It's annoying to even have to consider such things. That's what I think. I have no choice. I have to handle this myself. I made up my mind, and the next day I went to the factory office as Victor had instructed. I took a deep breath outside the office and then discreetly pressed the record button on my mobile phone. Then I entered the office. Inside, there were several clerks and Victor. Hello, Victor.
Oh, Christina, good of you to come.
Saying that, Victor guided me to the reception room. Then he opened up a laptop he brought.
These are invoices and purchase orders. Do you understand them?
Yes, I used to be a clerk here myself.
Right, then take a look at this.
Victor showed me a document file. It was labeled as an invoice. Invoice, total amount including tax $5,500. I spoke without realizing. Hearing that, Victor said to me,
That's right, but this company doesn't exist.
So this is a fake invoice for the transactions?
It seems Edwards processed it himself without going through the clerks.
Victor rambled on with excuses, but it was clearly a fake. It said invoice, but it wasn't in the usual format. Does he think he can fool me, a former clerk, with this level of fabrication? But arguing now would end the conversation. I needed to let Victor incriminate himself for proper retribution. I discreetly touched the pen in my chest pocket. Then I asked Victor, did Edwards really do this?
Yes, if you pay me the $5,500, I'll take care of it quietly.
But
you should just pay. It's for the best for you and Edwards.
I got my evidence. Now I wanted to make a copy of the document file. But with Victor here, it seemed impossible. Thinking of another way, I pretended to stagger in front of Victor. How can I... Saying this dramatically, I deliberately knocked the laptop keyboard. At that moment, I pressed a certain key twice. Victor panicked and checked the screen.
Be careful. What if the evidence gets deleted?
Sorry.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, I didn't mean to.
Well, there's a backup anyway.
Victor closed the document file. Then he shut the laptop and moved closer to me.
Now that you have seen the evidence, you'll pay, right? There's a family gathering at Dad's house this weekend. You know about that, right?
Actually, there is a meeting with all the relatives at my father-in-law, Borden's house this weekend. It seems there will be discussions about the succession of the company as per Borden's wishes. I have been told to attend in place of Edwards, who is in France. Victor had said to bring the money there. I'll think about it.
You better just pay up for your own good.
Victor laughed with a laugh that seemed villainous to me. Well, then. With that, I left the reception room. As I exited the office, I unexpectedly found Victor's wife, Violet, waiting. Hello, Christina. Violet, what is it? You heard Victor's story, right? Violet looked me up and down. Apparently, she knew about Victor threatening me. This isn't good. I thought so internally because Victor isn't that smart, but Violet is different. She's quite intelligent, actually, but she only uses her intelligence for bad purposes, sly and deceitful. She is lived by tricking men. Violet is that kind of woman. So this was a critical situation. I pretended to be calm. I heard Victor's story, so You better just pay up quietly. Thank you for the advice, but I have no intention of paying. With that, I tried to leave quickly. Suddenly, Violet grabbed my arm. Then she reached into my pocket. Oh, hell! I let out a voice involuntarily because Violet had taken my mobile phone from my pocket. You recorded the conversation? Violet asked while looking at the screen. Give it back? I won't. Saying that, Violet stopped the recording. Then she restrained me with one hand and played the recorded file. Victor's conversation with me began to play. I see. You were planning to expose us with this? You thought you wouldn't get caught? That's... I couldn't reply to her accusation. Violet laughed and deleted the file. Huh? That was the moment I lost one piece of evidence. Then Violet took out her mobile phone. You need to be more careful with eavesdropping like this. She played something like music. Then suddenly, my voice came from Violet's mobile phone. So I'll pay for the renovations. I remembered this conversation. It was from a phone call with Mom a while back. My family home's bathroom had become old and Mom had consulted me about renovating it. But she was planning to give up because the estimate was higher than expected. So I had offered to pay for the renovation. Why is that conversation? How? You married Edwards for the money, didn't you? That's not true. But it could sound like that, or should I edit it to sound that way? Violet whispered in my ear, almost like a threat. I was scared by her words and couldn't say anything, just hung my head. Then, as Violet pushed my mobile phone back into my pocket, now that the recording is gone and we have this, you understand you have to pay, right? What? Pay quietly. Violet murmured and slipped past me, then entered the office. What a pair! I won't forgive them ever. Maybe Violet was the one pulling the strings behind Victor. At least it's clear she's egging him on. I need to be more careful in dealing with this. I immediately sent Victor a message. I'll pay the money. Just that one sentence. Of course, I had no intention of paying, but that one message would lure Violet into a false sense of security. It would prevent her from manipulating the recording of our conversation, and without doing so, it would be difficult to punish Violet. She is that cunning. It's a bit of a gamble, but I think I can outsmart Victor, who's weak at gambling. I re-energized myself and waited for the weekend. Then, on the weekend, as I arrived at my in-laws' house, I saw that Victor and his wife had just arrived. Victor immediately approached me. About the money, there are relatives here, so let's talk somewhere else after the meeting? Right. Victor, thinking he succeeded, nodded readily to my suggestion. Then Violet approached, so I quickly went to my mother-in-law. I spent my time doing various tasks as directed by mother-in-law while serving coffee. Barton entered the room. As he sat in front of all the relatives, the room fell silent. Then Borden started speaking. Today I've gathered you to discuss the future management of the company. Dad, it's about the succession, right? Victor interjected excitedly. Barton's expression darkened a bit. Calm down, Victor. That's part of it. But we're discussing the company's management first. Sorry. Victor shrank back and laughter could be heard from the relatives. It seems everyone knows Victor isn't very smart. I continued my tasks, feeling embarrassed for him, then Borden. Christina, can you play this video on the TV? Handed me a laptop. It displayed graphs of the company's performance. That's when I had an idea. I realized this was my chance. I nodded quietly. Understood, I'll get it ready now. I connected the laptop to the large TV, preparing to display the screen. Meanwhile, I inserted a prepared memory card. After everything was set up, I told Borden, "It's ready, I'll start the output." Thank you, Christina. With Borden's approval, I projected the video on the TV. At the same time, I played the audio from the memory card. If you pay me $5,500, I'll take care of it quietly. Victor's voice threatening me in the office played in front of the relatives. What's this? Victor panicked. He tried to stop the audio, but Borden stopped him. What? Victor, I want to hear it all. Victor turned pale. Violet, surprised to hear the audio she had deleted, was also visible. Then the audio switched to Violet threatening me. You were planning to expose us with this? You thought you wouldn't get caught? The conversation from when Violet deleted my phone recording played. Violet looked perplexed, wondering how the audio remained. I smirked at Violet. Of course, I wasn't careless. I had taken extra precautions. Before meeting Victor, I had prepared to record audio on my mobile phone, but recording with a phone is common and not foolproof. So, as a backup, I had a pen-shaped IC recorder. I recorded the audio with that as well. That's what made the difference.
What's this, Victor? That is,
Victor couldn't even come up with an excuse. He's not very smart, it seems. Violet, on the other hand, quickly made an excuse.
Barton, it's not true. This is Christina's trap.
She shouted, glaring at me. Victor joined in.
Yeah, it's impossible that I would threaten Edward's wife. This is just part of the conversation. So, Violet and I are innocent.
Barton's gaze shifted to me. After looking at me intently, Barton said,
Christina, do you have anything to say?
This is the truth. I was threatened by Victor and Violet.
Like how?
Exactly as in the audio. Edwards embezzled funds and I was told to compensate for it. As I stated the facts, Victor interrupted the conversation.
There is no proof. If it's not fabricated, then show us the evidence.
Honestly, this was the most troubling part. Even though I had presented the audio as evidence, if they claimed it was fake, I had no counter. As I struggled, Victor got carried away.
That's right. Don't frame me without evidence.
There is no proof, right? It's a lie.
Violet also started making a fuss. I sighed, then pointing at Victor's laptop, I asked, Can I see that, please?
My laptop?
There's evidence on it. Quickly, I took Victor's laptop and handed it to Barton.
Dad, please, give it back.
Victor pleaded with Barton, but his mouth was smiling. Judging from his demeanor, the incriminating document file had likely been deleted. Glancing at Violet, she too had a faint smile on her face. I took a deep breath before saying, There should be a document file on that laptop. Please look for it, Barton. I tell Barton. Barton started searching for the file. However, all he found were company documents. The fake document file was nowhere to be found.
Just company documents.
Barton looked at me with a disappointed expression. That's strange. Maybe it was deleted? I replied to Barton, feigning panic.
Barton frowned. This is troublesome. I don't know whose side to take.
Barton was deep in thought. Victor and Violet couldn't hide their smug smiles, looking triumphant. There's nothing we can do if the file's been deleted. As I said this, Violet quickly stood up. Then staring at me,
Let's kick out this liar. It's for the best for our family. Barton,
she declared. Victor joined in the uproar.
Can't believe Edwards married such a bad woman. She should be thrown out of the company.
The relatives quietly observed the commotion. It seemed they were still unable to decide whose side was right. It was time to play my trump card. I braced myself and said to Barton, Barton, one last thing. Please check the screenshot folder.
Screenshots?
Yeah, it's a function to save the screen. Glancing at Violet, I saw her face turn pale. Apparently, she realized what I meant. A screenshot of the computer screen can be easily saved with a button press.
Oh, I found it. This is it. Labeled as an invoice.
Barton glared at Victor. Victor looked at Violet with a panicked face.
What? Why? She didn't touch the laptop.
But Violet, seemingly admitting defeat, slumped down in disappointment. When Victor showed me the fake invoice, I had pushed my hand against the keyboard. Actually, at that moment, I took a screenshot. There was no need to name it, so there was no screen prompt to name the file, which is why Victor didn't notice. However, the screen does flicker for a moment when taking a screenshot. If he had noticed that, maybe, but Victor didn't notice. Violet probably thought that by deleting the document file, there would be no evidence left. After all, it's not possible to copy it in an instant or save it under a different name. Additionally, my message saying, I'll pay the money, must have helped lower their guard. It worked this time, but I don't think this method will always be effective. Anyway, Barton decided I was right and scolded Victor and Violet on the spot. Confronted by Barton, Victor quickly confessed the whole situation. Unable to pay his gambling debts, he was in dire straits, and broke down crying. Violet also admitted she had schemed to make me pay to cover Victor's debt. Victor and Violet, scolded by the gathered relatives, had to make a deep apology to me. But this wasn't a matter that could be easily forgiven. Legally, this was a case of extortion. Though it was a family matter, I didn't want to make a big deal of it. Still, Borden decided that having people like Victor in the company wasn't good. He fired Victor and disowned him. Naturally, being fired meant no severance pay. Victor and Violet, burdened with debt, left town. But they didn't divorce. Apparently, Violet couldn't bear to abandon a sobbing Victor. Later, a business associate informed Edwards about Victor and Violet's whereabouts. They had been doing odd jobs here and there, but ultimately couldn't escape their debtors. In desperation, they fled to a factory they had dealt with and begged the owner to take on their debt. In return, they agreed to work there, living on the premises. They are still working there as live-in workers. With Victor gone, Edwards was determined to be the successor to the factory. Now, I think I need to be more supportive of Edwards. Despite everything, I can't help but respect Violet's compassion. To not abandon someone so hopeless is something I can't imagine doing. Well, my Edwards is smart and incomparably better than Victor.